Hello, Floss family. In our next interview series today, we are here with Taylor Ricci, and she is one of the founders of Damn Worth It. And Damn Worth It is a student-led campaign that is utilizing the influential platform of athletics to open up the conversations around mental health in universities across the country. It was started by Taylor and her co-founder, Nathan Braaten, two student athletes who saw a change needed around the topic of mental health and suicide. So today we're joined by Taylor, who is a former NCAA gymnast for Oregon State. So thank you, Taylor, for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And now this has been such a tough year. So I want to ask, how are you really doing right now? Like, how are you handling things emotionally, mentally? How is Taylor doing?
Yeah, so I'm doing well. I'm definitely doing a lot better than I was 4 months ago when I think everything with COVID happened. This year, I've been going through my first year of medical school at University of British Columbia. So with COVID, literally, it was one day where we're in the hospitals, we're in the clinics, we're in the classroom, and then the next day we're at home and we're locked up at home for what's the next 2, 3, 4 months up here. So definitely was challenging. I think that, outside of just school, when you're alone and you really kind of learn a lot about yourself, but you're also you learn a lot of what you're struggling with too. So definitely, I think along with everyone right now, COVID has brought a lot of challenges, but overall, I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm. And I love how open and just honest you were about how you're doing. And I imagine that had to contribute to you starting this campaign. So, I got to know, what exactly was your inspiration for creating Damn Worth It? What is the backstory to that?
Yeah, so Damn Worth It. It is something that just really, it's a huge passion project because Damn Worth It right now is, to me, this beacon of hope. And it was started out of complete darkness, out of complete tragedy. So kind of the background behind Damn Worth It. When I went to college, I knew what mental health was, but I never personally went through my own mental health struggles. There obviously were challenges in sport and in school, but really it was my senior year where kind of my mental health journey began. I remember I was at practice one day and I was conditioning beside my teammates and I had my hands behind my head doing sit-ups, and I turned to my teammate and said, I think I feel a bit of a bald spot on the back of my head. And we kind of just laughed it off, thinking we were both really sweaty and, hair was parted funny. But went home that night, showered up, and my teammate came out and was like, "Hey, let's check that out." And she looked at the back of my head and she screamed. And my other teammates came out into my room and took a look. And I think there's those moments where you see people's reactions and you don't know what's going on, but because of their reactions, it's not good. And what they had found was a ginormous bald spot on the back of my head. And over the next couple of weeks, I lost about 50% of the hair in my head, went through numerous doctor's appointments because we had no idea what was going on, and eventually was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called alopecia. And in the sport of gymnastics, you're judged on perfection. You're judged on beauty. Your job is to stand in front of a judge and salute and show them how beautiful and perfect you can be. So going through that my senior year definitely posed its mental health challenges. I was ashamed of what my body was doing to me. I was ashamed of how I looked. So a lot of just kind of internal struggles with mental health. And obviously you can see my hair has grown back, which has been wonderful, but it was a couple months after I finished up my senior season when I was at home and I got a call from my coach telling me that one of my former teammates had taken her life to suicide. I think that suicide is tough, and athletes know what it's like to be a teammate. And I don't think there's any bond that's closer than a teammate. So losing one of my teammates, one of my sisters, it was the toughest day of my life. And kind of my immediate reaction was to be strong for the other girls, and spent the day calling them, talking to them, and kind of ignoring what my emotions were to help them. And kind of that all climaxed at her memorial a couple weeks later, where I just couldn't even walk in. And found myself face to face with my coach. And, I just said to him, I should have done more. I could have done more. And how am I going to get past this? And he knew me better than I knew myself in that moment. And he said, you know what, Taylor, you're someone that's going to heal by doing something about this. A little bit of background is less than a year beforehand, Nathan, the co-founder, lost a teammate to suicide as well. So in the span of a year, Oregon State Athletics lost 2 student athletes. So I think both of those events, Nathan and I both being leaders on our team, we really just came to campus that fall and barely knew each other at the time, but went out for a cup of coffee and talked through kind of what we were going through and our struggles and our emotions. And that 30-minute coffee date turned into 5 hours of us putting pen to paper saying, what can we do? And really that's where Damn Worth It was born.
Wow, that is, a heck of an origin story. And again, I appreciate you for sharing that and being so open to dive that deep into your emotions. I can imagine that being a very challenging time for you. But that right there in itself kind of just shows the beauty in athletics for starts, and just that bond that you build. Like you said, like it's hard to find a better bond than the bond between your teammates, because we go through all these challenges, mental challenges, physical challenges together, and remain together. So I love that you said that. And then also too, just really shows why Damn Worth It is such an important, campaign, an important organization. So how do you see Damn Worth It really helping people? Like, what are like the main objectives of your organization?
Yeah, so our mission statement, as you said at the beginning of the interview, was to utilize the influential platform with sports and athletics to open up the conversation around mental health to ultimately end the stigma. So we do that through 3 major pillars. So we've got education, resources, and then awareness. So education and resources, it is what it sounds like. So we use social media platforms, we use events on Oregon State's campus to really educate student athletes and students about mental health and the difference between mental health and mental wellness. And resources is the constant promotion and utilization of resources on our campus. So those are things like suicide prevention training workshops. Those are things like bringing in mental health professionals to talk about suicide. And then awareness is our favorite pillar because it's the most fun. And really the essence of that pillar is the Damn Worth It games. So when we first started up the campaign, we said, you know what, we want every sports team at Oregon State to dedicate 1 game, 1 competition a year for mental health awareness and call it its Damn Worth It game. So at those games, we're handing out wristbands. We have the athletes wearing these t-shirts. We have fans fill out signs that say, I'm damn worth it, because we play a promo video at halftime. And really those games happening 16 times a year on our campus, that's 16 opportunities for students, student athletes, and fans to bring the uncomfortable topic of mental health into the comfortable circle of sports. So that's kind of the essence of what Damn Worth It does on a day-to-day basis.
And I love every bit of that. And, recently you guys took Damn Worth It and everything that you're doing and really joined 2 other organizations that Flawless loves and adore as well. And it just made this big, powerful group of just mental health advocates. You guys came together and hosted the Strength Stories virtual mental health conference that I was a part of. And really, like that, I told our founder, Janine, no offense to any of the events I've ever attended, but that was one of my favorites. One, it puts me back in my element around a bunch of other student athletes and whatnot. But then after the fact, we were also touched and motivated by it that we started connecting with one another. We have a group me now. We follow each other. We personally follow each other on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like we really started to build that special student athlete bond. And like you said, that's just so special between student athletes. So I gotta know, how did this event come about? Like, how did you get connected with Helinski's Hope and D1on1 and just create this amazing mental health conference?
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, for the praise. Strength Stories, we had no idea how it was going to turn out, and it just exceeded our expectations. So we're really excited for more in the future. But how the three organizations got connected, it's really quite wild looking back. Um, Damn Worth It, when we first launched, it was January of 2018, and we had our launch date planned for months. And it was 48 hours before we launched that Tyler Helinski took his life to suicide. So I think that is, what really brought mental health in NCAA athletics to the surface. It really kind of put it on everyone's mind, and everyone was like looking around being, what do we do about this? And then 48 hours, here was Oregon State launching their Damn Worth It, saying, we've been through this and this is how we're responding. So even before knowing Kim Helinski and their family, Nathan and I were really touched by them, really impacted by their son's life. And it was almost a year later when we hosted our first Damn Worth It football game that we said, you know what, it has to be Oregon State versus Washington State. We need to bring these two schools together. And that was me picking up the phone and cold calling Kim Helinski saying, this is what we want to do. And her hopping on a plane to come down for this event. And that's kind of where we first met. And then, 2 years passed, and we found ourselves on a Zoom call with D one-on-one. And our connection with them was Nathan and I, we traveled across the Pac-12 last year to all the Pac-12 member institutions and spoke to their student athletes about Damn Worth It and our stories. And we got connected with Andrew Cooper, who is one of the founders of D one-on-one. So, it really was just connections that brought us together. And that's kind of what inspired Strength and Stories too, because it was, just a bunch of individuals that weren't from the same school, weren't from the same state, and weren't from the same sport. And we came together with a common mission and accomplished this mental health conference. So that's kind of how we all three came together to bring about Strength and Stories.
Wow, that's it's definitely a tough beginning to that with everything going on with Tyler Helinski. But I just love how you guys all came together and just really creating something special. So I'm loving hearing about Taylor the advocate, but this is two student athletes or former student athletes having a conversation. So I also want to know a little bit about Taylor the athlete, and like you said, sports is such a beautiful thing, but it's also a very tough thing at the same time. So I want to know, as an athlete, what was your favorite moment, and then what was your most challenging moment in your career, and what was your response to that moment?
Yeah, man, I was a gymnast for 20 years. So to pick one moment for each of those is tough, but I'm going to start with the toughest moment because it led to the best moment, if that works. So my toughest moment, so when I came to Oregon State, I was coming off being an elite gymnast in Canada, and I was coming to Oregon State being 5 feet tall. And by the end of my freshman year, I was over 5'5". So I grew 5 inches in, I think it was 10 months. Absolutely insane. In the sport of gymnastics itself, growth spurts are like the worst thing that could happen to a gymnast. So growing 5 inches at the age of 18, 19 years old, it really destroyed my gymnastics career that first year. I lost a lot of my skills. I couldn't perform the routines that I was recruited for. And I came in expecting to be an all-arounder for Oregon State and didn't end up competing a single lineup my freshman year. And didn't really know what was happening during the time, but at a meeting with my coach at the end of my freshman year, it really just kind of hit the surface when, my head coach said, you're not doing the gymnastics we recruited you for. And it's not necessarily your fault, but your body changed, your gymnastics changed, and Oregon State is a top 10 program in the country. We have expectations. So I was kind of given a choice in that moment to either figure it out or to figure out a new plan. So that was definitely tough. Gymnastics was my whole world. And, I think different athletes go through it with different experiences, whether it's a torn injury of some sort, but that was a moment where like gymnastics could have been taken away like that. So my response to that was walking straight from our office to our strength and conditioning coach and saying, this is what I need to do. And then walking straight from his office to our nutritionist office saying, this is what I need to do. So for the next 3 months, I worked my butt off. We had 4-hour practices, and then I'd walk straight over to my strength coach and did additional workouts with him consistently. And, in 3 months, my body changed. I got fitter, I got leaner, I got more muscle. And then slowly my gymnastics started to change as well. And, I did successfully get my scholarship renewal for the next 3 years. So that was definitely the toughest challenge I think I went through as an athlete. And it led to my favorite moment, which was my sophomore year. So about a year later, our team qualified to NCAA championships. So only 12 teams in gymnastics make it to NCAAs. And during that season, we ended up losing a lot of our teammates to injuries, which was horrific. But we lost one of our teammates, one of our top girls, at the competition immediately preceding NCAAs. So essentially, my coach said, "You're up." And I competed in the floor lineup for the first time in my college career. And I'd worked very hard that whole year, where other athletes on my team were doing one floor routine a day. I was doing 3 just to try and get to the level they needed me to be at. And ended up competing at NCAA, starting our team off, and, got one of the highest scores from our team. And really the best moment though wasn't that routine. It was immediately following, after high-fiving all the girls and high-fiving my head coach. My assistant coach came up to me and he hugged me and he pulled me back and said, "All that hard work you put in when no one was watching was for this moment right here." And it gives me chills just thinking about that moment. I was never an all-American athlete. I never, won the meets, but I worked my butt off, and that moment right there was all worth it.
Like you said, you're getting chills. I'm getting chills, like just visualizing like that moment and just all the adversity that like you faced and then responded to. Like that is what it means to be an athlete, to put yourself in those tough positions and to respond and to bounce back. And something else that you said I really appreciated was you were facing this moment where the sport that you love, that you ended up playing for 20
Mm-hmm.
years, could have been gone like that. And that's why I think you're the perfect person to answer this question, because right now we do have some athletes who had their senior year and was gone like that, or are now facing a senior year or a season that might be gone because of COVID-19. A lot of, the benefit, at least for a lot of collegiate athletes, is they can potentially get that year back from redshirting. But if you're a high school senior, you might be losing out on that. Or if you already graduated, you've lost out on that. So what advice do you have, being an elite athlete at the top level, facing those type of predicaments? What would you say to an athlete that may now be coming to that same situation, except now it's because of COVID?
Yeah, it's so tough. My heart sank when spring sports were canceled with the NCAA. Um, I think that, all of us athletes, we hold on to this thing we call the athletic identity so strongly, which was one of the topics we talked about in our Strength and Stories conference. For 20 years, I was introduced as Taylor the gymnast, and people said, "Taylor, are you the gymnast?" That was what I was known for. And I don't think that's individual to me. I think that's, were you the football player? Were you the basketball player? So we hold on to these identities so strongly. And I think that whenever an athlete, reaches the end of that career for whatever reason, the struggle is figuring out, what am I beyond my athletic identity? And I think that's what COVID is bringing out in a lot of senior student athletes right now, who potentially are done their careers or who may not get that final season they've worked so hard for. So kind of my best advice for them is to figure out what is beyond your athletic identity. And what I said to a teammate actually just recently was, "You know what, I will always be Taylor the gymnast. You can never take Taylor the gymnast away, but I will no longer do gymnastics. But those skill sets and the work ethic and the lessons that I learned from gymnastics are going to be applied to something bigger." And for me, I hope that's medicine, the teamwork, the drive. I hope that I'll apply those skills to becoming a doctor one day. So my best advice is making yourself the best version of yourself in every facet of your life, whether that's your fitness level. If you can't be swinging on the uneven bars, make sure that your body is in the top shape so that when you do get that opportunity, or when you do decide what that next step is, your body's ready to go. focus on your academics because school can never be taken away. Focus on what your goals and what your dreams are. I think letting go of that athletic identity is one of the toughest things to do. But an even tougher thing to do is figure out what's beyond it. So if an athlete can start that now, start that early, so that when their career is finished, that they feel that they still have things of value within themselves, they'll be 10 steps ahead of where I was when I retired from gymnastics.
Yeah, I love that. Like, especially the, I battled myself with the athletic identity, graduate. I didn't figure out that mental health was my next passion until the spring of my senior season when football was actually taken away from me. It's like, okay, now you really have to make a decision on what you want to do with your life. So, like you said, if people follow that advice, they'll be way ahead of you were, way ahead of where I was in that point in my career. But assuming and hoping that things kind of get back to normal and we have sports, I want to know, what your top, advice would be for athletes in those high pressure moments. Being a gymnast is a high pressure sport. You have a lot of eyes on you, and you really have to be in tune with yourself and really have to be mentally strong. So in those moments, like you said, when you had to just, your coach said you're up, and you really have to get right in your mind. Like, what are your top mental health tips, or maybe some things, some rituals that you do?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things I learned in college athletics, and I didn't learn it towards the end of my career, and I wish I learned it earlier, but ironically, gymnastics is a sport where you're trying to be perfect. You're trying to get that 10.0 perfect score. And I think that, as a gymnast, I felt like I always needed to be perfect. And I think that's the case with every athlete, whether you're a gymnast or whether you're a football player, that need and that belief that you need to be perfect. And that puts an additional pressure on you because no one's perfect and no one can be perfect. We can strive for perfection, but the moment that you let go of that pressure to be that 10.0 gymnast or that perfect athlete, it takes a lot of pressure off. And I think that with college athletics, you're a part of a team, and big piece of that is that if you aren't perfect, rely on your teammates, rely on them to help you get through. So kind of that realization of I don't need to be perfect was like step one in my athletic performance just skyrocketing. And then kind of the second piece was, just working. I was not the most talented gymnast. And there's that cliche saying of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that was kind of my motto. So that when you're in those high pressured situations, you can trust the work that you've done. And that was a big thing as well. And then the last thing that was very, very prominent on our team at Oregon State was we did mental training every single day. We had this exact same mental routine that we would say to ourselves or we would visualize for ourselves before every single moment. And kind of our coach's philosophy on that is that, you change the environment. Maybe you're on a different field or you're in a different arena, but if you can keep the consistency in what you self-talk to yourself, what you visualize, every arena is going to be the same. So those are kind of the three big things that I did. And I was a huge Headspace athlete. I loved that app, and I used that app almost daily my senior year. So, I think everyone's different, but it's figuring out, what are those tips and tricks that are going to help you be at the top of your game.
Appreciate you for that. So, but now tapping back into Taylor, the advocate, what are your just general self-care tips or maybe things you do daily that just helps you keep going and stay regulated?
Yeah. So I think this is for everyone, but especially for athletes and retired athletes. Sport was our escape. Working out was our escape. It was our moment to turn our brains off and clear our minds. So I work out probably too much, but I try and work out almost every day, whether that's running or weight training or yoga, just that 1 hour a day where I can turn my brain off. And I find that my anxiety and my stress gets way too high when I've taken, a couple days off of working out. So working out is huge for me. That's kind of like the biggest thing that I try and do for my mental health. I think right now with COVID, a big thing that I've been doing is just trying to be outside as much as possible. So instead of, scrolling through Instagram on my phone, I try and go for a walk outside. But being outdoors, working out, and just focusing on consistency as well. I've known for years that I function best off of a schedule. And for 20 years, I had a coach say, get up at 6 a.m. for your cardio training, then go to your athletic training to get your therapy, then come to practice, then go to class. And when that schedule is taken away, I think that, you do mentally and emotionally feel pretty lost. So kind of being your own coach and creating your day-to-day schedule.
And now, I mean, we spoke to the uncertainty that COVID-19 brings, but
Mm-hmm.
is there anything that we should be kind of, looking out for with Damn Worth It? Do you guys
Mm-hmm.
have any campaigns that you're cooking up right now?
Yeah, so Damn Worth It is a consistent campaign that's ran by students at Oregon State, students and student athletes, which is really, really awesome. I think it's a really rare thing for campuses to have an integrated committee of both sides of the school. So we're in the process right now of electing that new committee that's going to run the show at Oregon State. Kind of looking beyond that, Damn Worth It is looking to become a nonprofit so that it can expand beyond just Oregon State. Our ultimate goal is to have a version of Damn Worth It on every single campus across the NCAA. So slowly but surely working towards making that a reality. And then because of Strength and Stories and that turnout, Damn Worth It is hoping that Helinski's Hope and D1-on-1 that we have many more of those events to come and make it bigger, have more athletes on. But really just anything that we can do right now to stay connected in a world that is in isolation right now is our big focus.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And kind of my final question for you, Taylor, is, I want to know what gives you hope. And another way that we look at that at Flawless is we say, what would a flawless world look like to you? But essentially, what gives you hope, or what are things that needs to change that will make this world more flawless, in your opinion?
Yeah. Oh man, I could go on and on about this question, but I think that a flawless world or a perfect world is a world where everyone accepts their imperfections or where everyone accepts their flaws. I think that is a world where people are more connected, people are more relatable, and it's really that human connection that keeps us going, and it's human connection that gives me hope on a day-to-day basis, conversations, messages, all of that. So yeah, I would say a flawless world is where you accept your flaws.
And that was a flawless answer. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have, for everyone watching, we'll have Taylor's socials and websites, as well as Damn Worth It, in the description below, and we'll edit that in the video. But for now, Taylor, thank you again for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me.